I was just so intrigued by, I don't know, some of the running stories I've heard, and I was thinking, well, I got to meet you because I just think sometimes our physical journey is a
Yes.
model for our social or spiritual or intellectual journey. And so
Hmm.
sometimes the very lessons we learn in one domain apply to the other.
Yes. I agree.
And
I completely agree with that.
yeah, and so I find that sometimes it really helps people to look through a different lens, and they're like, oh, like I'm not a runner, but I'm this, and I can apply
Hmm.
that same thing here.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm with you on that one for sure. I
So
think they all do have that connection.
yeah, so tell me about your background, how you got into running, and why you went on this race.
Well, so the funny story about how I got into running is I had a newspaper route. I'm old enough to have had that experience.
Yeah.
So it started in fifth grade, but the requirement was to have all of our newspapers delivered by 6:30. But I enjoyed my sleep. So my situation was I would sleep as long as I could, and then I would get up and sprint my paper routes every single day, except for Sundays. I couldn't sprint it because it was the Des Moines Register, and their Sunday edition was way too heavy to sprint. But
Where
in
did you grow up? What part of the country?
the Midwest, I grew up in Iowa, so the Des Moines Register was my paper. I would deliver
Okay.
every day, but the requirement was 6:30, and so I was doing that every day for a couple years. So I was constantly fit and in shape. So when it came time for the Presidential Physical Fitness Award, not
Uh-huh.
only was I beating the girls, but I was even beating the boys because I'm the person out there sprinting my newspaper route every morning being fit. So that's really how my running journey began is because I enjoyed sleep. That was my
How
motivation.
can I be most lazy actually help me succeed in life?
Yeah. And so then I became known as the fast girl in the class.
Okay.
And literally anybody who had running every morning for 30 to 45 minutes would be in shape also. But because nobody else was doing that, I was the fit one. So I was running, just doing the newspaper route, and then I did go out for track. There was no cross country in my little town because we are very rural. I grew up in a town of like 5,000 people.
Okay.
And our track in those days was just that little fine gravel track that was like a
Okay.
slow track.
Crushed gravel that can like flaky a little bit.
Yeah, it was gravel, so we didn't even have an all-purpose track. And so I really never became, once I stopped doing the paper route, I wasn't fit anymore. Like I wasn't like the best, like I still had endurance. I still was a long distance runner for the 400 meter and the 800 meter, but I wasn't out there winning things. Like I wasn't that great anymore. Like I was getting beat at the regional level, state
Is
level, and
this in high
everything.
school then?
High school, yeah, because I just wasn't as fit anymore because I was doing other things like lifeguarding, working in cornfields, so running wasn't as big of a priority during that time
Did
of
your
my
family
life.
have a farm?
So my grandparents both were on farms, but my parents went to college. They were the first to go to college, and
Okay.
then they became an accountant and a nurse, and we lived inside the town. So we
Okay.
were not on the farms. Then I went to school. I transplanted to Utah. I went to school at BYU for a year. Again, not much running. I did take a class that had some running involved, but that's when I started to run again, and then became my season of my life as a recreational runner.
Yeah.
And I could Boston, like, so I did that for my college experience, just ran and qualified for Boston, and I could qualify for Boston fairly easy, just running weekly mileage of like 25 or 30 miles a week. And then sometimes I would run the 20-mile. I joined a team, leukemia, because they had similar interests. Plus, we did fundraising for leukemia patients. And so I did get onto a team leukemia team for a few years, and that's where I found my first coach who kind of knew how to train me for fast times.
Okay, so let me
And
pause you there. Found
yeah,
a coach. Coaches are
Okay.
really important. Coaches are not on the field with you, right? They watch
Mhm.
you, they strategize with you. What makes a good coach? What makes a bad coach?
Well, so for me, so everybody's different. Everyone's unique. So what works for one person does not work for the next person.
Yeah.
But for me, I really do. I want to, let's see, like, I don't want to let my coach down. I want to show progression to my coach. I want to show that I'm doing what this coach is asking me to do and I'm improving. So I did care because of the time that my coach was giving to me that I wanted to improve for my coach.
So
Like I
that
care.
connection really helps
Connection.
inspire accountability, inspire growth.
Exactly. So then he actually moved, he got a coaching job out in Virginia at a college. And so he left Utah, went out to Virginia, and then we just lost contact. So then it was just, one thing that really helped me was he wanted me then to help coach the group that he left behind.
Uh-huh.
And so he sent me to coaching training with this famous coach in our nation. His name was Jack Daniels. He wrote a book as a really popular book during the 1990s. So because I'm older, I'm in my 50s. So when I was in my 20s, this was what the book people were reading. The
Yeah.
Jeff Galloway marathon book, and then the Jack Daniels How to Train for a Marathon book. Also, Jack Daniels had the 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon as well. So
Okay.
the coach who was moving to Virginia actually sent me to a coach training, and I got the Jack Daniels book and got it signed by the Jack Daniels. So he
How
coached.
rare is how many people have been trained by him, you think?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't. But it was a situation that was arranged by Team Leukemia. So he's doing it. Jack
Okay.
Daniels was doing this out of the kindness of his heart, as a volunteer situation. And he was like the keynote speaker for a big marathon. So he did the training for us connecting with that event. And that was up in Anchorage, Alaska. That event was up there. So
Oh,
that's where I got my first taste of to be trained to be a coach. But then right after the training, it was just how ironic is life. Right after I get the training, I became pregnant with twins.
oh
And
my
then
checker.
so they were my numbers 4 and number 5. So in my short coaching experience of a few months,
Yeah.
I then became pregnant with twins, and they're now in their 20s. So that's how long ago we're talking about, is this journey I was on. But I did learn some valuable skills of just like how to develop your VO2 max, which people don't really understand until they get into this training and how to improve your VO2 max.
What
The
is that?
best,
Oxygen or what is that?
yeah, it's your ability, your body's ability to transfer oxygen into the muscles and all that. And they measure it. There's measurement tools. It's like this big thing that you can put over you. But if you run certain times in certain races, there's an algorithm where you can gauge what your VO2 max is. So I just, instead of me going to like a laboratory at a university or in a hospital, I just base VO2 max off how I'm doing in races. And this really doesn't matter for most runners, but I tend to use it for myself to know where my fitness level is at.
Okay.
And as a coach, that's where I first learned about it, was from Jack Daniels. And I might have just frozen, but here,
it froze for a second.
every often I might freeze. So then my twins are growing up. I now have 5 children under the age of 7, and I'm working at the University of Utah Hospital. And so I really don't have a lot of time to invest in the running area. So I took a break for a while while I'm raising my children.
Yeah.
And I always was the lady who would run with the ladies in the neighborhood, or I would do a half marathon here or something there, but nothing spectacular. I could still Boston qualify though for the marathon. I could still get fast times based off the little training I did do.
Okay.
So I was just very fortunate. I didn't have to put a lot of time into it. But it was in my 40s. My youngest was about 5 years old. I moved from a city in Utah into Draper area. And it was almost like a blind date arrangement. One of my old running partners, like, she's not old, she's younger than me, but a person I have known for
long time. You've known a long time.
known her since pre-twin years. She knew I was moving into an area that one of her other running partners her younger days also lived. So she made this arrangement so our running partner connected me with one of her other running partners. So we met like a blind date. We started on this run, and then she introduces me to her coach. And then I find out later, like not on the first day we run together, because she's just she doesn't brag about herself, but later that she had qualified for the Olympic trials 5 times in her life.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't just set up with just some everyday neighborhood lady runner. I was set up with this gifted, talented, fast lady who's been winning national championships and went to world's championship to represent the United States of America. That's who I got set up with.
How did that feel?
Well, because I didn't know at first. It's like later the story starts coming. I'm like, who am I running with? I didn't know this about you. So I went into it very naive, very ignorant. But when you look at it, like in Utah and other states, the talented runners we have don't make front page news. So like she's doing all these amazing things, but she's not a household name.
Yeah.
Her husband had like 8 American records, but he's not on the front page of any newspapers in Utah. So these are out in the running community, in the national running community, very well-known individuals.
Can you share her name? Is that okay?
Well, yeah. So she now lives in Virginia. Her name. And she's left Utah maybe 8 years ago. But so she's no longer here. But her husband's name is Dennis Simonitis, and he was a real talented, like on the national level. They were very, very talented. But she was my mentor. She I trained with her for like 4 or 5 years and give her so much credit and her name was Michelle. But she was just extraordinarily talented. And then she shared what makes a great runner with me. And she also introduced me to an individual that did become my running coach for like the last 10 years.
Okay.
So that was the introduction to meet this running coach that changed my life. And he was a professional runner for 20 years. His name's Demetrio Cabanillas. And he very well-known runner, especially during the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. His career lasted over a few decades. But he and I met in our very first meeting. He wanted to get some background information about I'm in my 40s when I meet him. Like I'm 44. Yeah. And so he's like, tell me about your background. I'm like, well, I've always been a recreational runner. But I've always been able to beat you. But he goes, well, how many miles are you running a week? And I said, I'm running about like 25 to 30 miles a week. And he just laughed. He laughed. He's like, we're going to have to up your miles. He goes, you're just wasting your time. If you want to get faster, you're wasting your time on 25 or 30 miles a week. So I was like, oh my gosh, these people are serious.
Okay, so time to raise your standards. Okay.
Raise your mileage. And then after you spend a lot of time with them, after you spend years, that's pretty much what he says to any new runner that joins his running group is when they'll show up and they're like, here's my goals. And then he's like, well, how many miles are you running each week? And they'll tell him, and he goes, you're wasting your time. Here's what we got to get your miles up to. So I am not the one and only. He said that too. So I trained with him, and he did increase my miles slowly. Like we didn't do everything overnight. But then 4 years, he did have me running about 90 to 100 miles a week. And that's where my times just went. It went from like running a 3:35 marathon to running a 3-hour marathon. So in my 40s, I was able to take off like almost 35 to 40 minutes off my marathon time just by training with a coach who knew how to gauge my body and to increase my mileage when it needed to. But within that 4 miles of time, my times all went, like the fastest times I've ever ran in my life was when I was 48 years old. I was 48 when I was running my fastest in my life.
Okay, so I love that phrase, that I was 48 the fastest time of my life. And I think that there's many areas of our life where it doesn't matter age. With the right coach, with the right mentorship, with the right guidance, you can have the best quality of life in an area. Yes. So let's break this down. The spiritual area, that's like the intuitive area, you've got the intellectual area, the right knowledge, the social area, the right
Mhm.
relationships and feelings, and the physical area, like the right nutrition or the right exercise. How did he
Mhm.
help you in these 4 areas to
So
shift
he
your life?
so he here, I'm just gonna close this. Those
Sure, go
trees
for
are
it.
on real quick. So maybe I won't have a tree in my okay, that's better. So the great thing about him is he was really great about the nutritional side because I did have some running partners that had other coaches
Mhm.
who were really careful with their calories. So when I would talk to him about what should I, he's just like, you eat healthy and don't worry about it. I want you strong. I want you stronger and lighter. Like he goes, I'd rather have you running off strength than losing calories just to be light. Because he goes, if you're cutting calories, that makes you weaker. We don't want you weak. We want you strong. So, but just eat healthy. And so that's
He
was his.
trusted you to figure it out.
Yeah, I think he did trust it. Plus, he goes, you know how to eat clean, you know how to eat healthy. So he just kind of left it up to us because I don't think he wanted us to obsess about the
Yeah.
calorie thing. Because we're running so many miles, he wanted us to be out there running strong to gain strength instead of
Focus on the biggest things. Be
yeah.
strong, trust
Mhm.
yourself, you can eat healthy, and do the
Mhm.
miles.
Yep, and then just do the miles. And he says your body weight the miles will take off any extra stuff we don't want.
Because your
And
metabolism's burning and you're running like okay.
because
So
we
what
we
about
were running
knowledge
like
and
this.
intellect? What did he do with knowledge and intellect that provided you a lot of value?
So one thing that he does for me is because I've been with him for so long, the one thing he does for my knowledge is he supports me getting extra training and extra like certifications. So like when told him I'm like I think I want to become a USA track and field coach. He was already a coach. He goes, "Oh yeah, I completely support that." So he supported me becoming a coach. When there was a USA track and field certification for a brand new certification for marathon coaching, he's like, "Yes, let's have you do that. I think that would be great." And then when I would talk to him, because I was a teacher through when I was working with him, training with him, and I remember, okay, so this goes off topic, but we'll come back to the intellectual. But I'm teaching and I'm on my feet all day. I'm getting like 10,000 steps more just in the classroom, walking back, And I'm like, can I count that as training? He goes, no, absolutely not. We count. And I was like, I'm on my feet all day. He's like, no, no, no. We count only the miles you run as training miles. So we can't count classroom steps as training. But anyway, he always like supported the jobs I was working in. He was just a huge support for that. Plus, I am now back in grad school. I'm in my second year as a master's student, and he's completely supportive of that. Like he's willing to write letters of recommendation or do anything to help me improve my own life. He's very supportive of anything that I think about doing and try to do. He's just a very encouraging person who wants us to be the best we can
What
be.
kind of things would he say that would show encouragement?
I'm like, okay, so I'm considering going back to school to get my master's in, this particular. And he goes, oh, I think that's great. You're going back to school. Like he would just always encourage me. Like, that's great. That sounds like a great idea. I think it's wonderful
Yeah.
you're doing that. Yeah. And then also when I'm teaching, he goes, oh, I think you'd be a great teacher. Just a very encouraging, upbeat person, and everyone's his friend. When you do go on a run with the guy, he has the same place he starts at and finishes. And everyone along that trail, he like runs Jordan River Trail, starts at a particular spot on the trail, runs north and comes back south every day for like 20 plus years. So he knows everyone along that trail. And when you go running with him for just a 5-mile run, it can turn into a 2-mile run very quickly. For 5 miles is normally under an hour, but for him it's a 2-hour run because he stops to chat to everybody. He's such a positive and friendly person that there's no one he wants to not say hi to. He's just
So
very
this kind of makes a good segue to the social emotional component
yeah.
of having a good coach and
Mm-hmm.
the way that they live in their life. What do you think socially rubbed off on you after working with him?
Well, socially, oh, that anyone who wants to work at running can run. You can if you put the effort in, anyone can be a runner. We accept everyone. He is accepting of anyone and everyone. He never excludes anyone. So there was a time I remember, like, we would have running groups every Saturday morning, and he did it for 20 years. Then I did it for a while until my son's soccer games started conflicting with our run group times. But there was a time we were out together in our Saturday morning run group that we don't have anymore, but we did have, where I looked around, there was about 12 or 15 of us, somewhere in there, and everyone had been born outside of the United States. I was the only person born, but I wasn't even born in Utah. I was a native from Iowa. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all of us were like immigrants to Utah. Like every single one of us were transplants. But we had runners from Africa, Mexico, South America, Europe. We had them from, I think the only continent we didn't have was Australia. Like we had so many people from everywhere. And
yeah, it just makes me excited for the Olympics that are coming here to Utah in 2034.
Yeah.
So what I love how there's such a feeling of inclusiveness and the diversity of different people, and everybody's welcome. What about kind of intuition or spirituality or values resonated with you and him? What did he rub off on with you, that some values that you kind of took in, or maybe you rubbed off on him?
Well, so he and I are just close friends, and we can talk about everything. One thing I tell him, you're my coach in all those physical areas, and you're one of my support people, you're one of my people. But I did tell him, like, I'm not having all the success alone. I told him, I'm like, I get a priesthood blessing before every race, and I get help. I said, I know the only reason I'm running as well as I am is because God's helping me. I truly believe that. And I even told runners who I run with, it doesn't matter what denomination you are. There's a God out there that you can tap into, that you can channel into. He will strengthen you and support you. Even if you think it's just a little teeny hobby called running, it's important to him because it's important to us. And I learned that like 10 years ago. I got a blessing, and you kind of feel a little like, gosh, is this something I can get a blessing about?
Yeah.
And then in the blessing, my question was answered, that it is important, and that God delights when we come to him in all things. Not just the big spiritual challenges we have or the health challenges we have, but he delights when we come to him in all things. So there's actually, when I'm running my big races, God has been with me on the journey and all the training. But in the big races, like in Australia and Sydney, when I did that race and I got third overall in my age group in the world, there was a point in the race, I remember I crossed that halfway point, when you see that halfway big huge notice on the side, and I was like, all right, God, it's you and me, let's finish this beast. And I was like, talk that way to God, like I'm like, I just did. And he gets it, like he gets where we're coming from, like, because we've been in this journey so much together. This running has not been by myself. It's definitely been God involved through every part of it, and I'm still running injury free, and I really give credit to God. It's his timeline for me. But also I'm smart too. I'm not going to, I'm going to go do dangerous running things now, because I'm not going to go do back-to-back marathons, sprinting down mountains, like he's going to, because of my coach over here, he teaches me how to be safe in my training and safe in my racing. And then, so he like gives me my limits, and then God is what makes me limitless. Like we're smart here, but we're also, channeled in over here. So we have to give so much credit to God, because this is not by myself. None of it is.
Okay, now to the big climax that the listeners will be waiting for. Australian Sydney run. Okay. Tell me about what you prepared for. Tell me about the experience, and what was an awareness that happened after this race, something that you learned about yourself or life that was different afterwards.
Okay, so, well, first of all, I have to talk about the training. Okay. The training, people think, oh, you love to run. We can love so much in life. But there's a point. How long did you train
for? How long was that?
Okay, so my training process, I had been training really hard all winter for a half marathon race. I wanted to get the age group record on it. So
Yeah.
that was the beginning of June. So I had developed like, and so I used the training from January for the June race, but then I then leveled up from that June race to get ready for the September World Championship race. So it's like I kind of use stepping stones. So I used that half marathon in June as a stepping stone. I took the 2 weeks.
The race was like last month. When was it?
It was last month. It was in September. It was September 15th or 16th. It was that Sunday in Sydney. It was like Saturday our day, but Sydney was. Well, so what happened was, so I would say that the training for Sydney is a 10-year. It was a 10-year process to get to where you have to get. You have all that training in your legs, so you have all this muscle memory. It doesn't happen overnight. You create muscle memory. So then I had to run qualifying races just to get into the Sydney race. So you have to run fast times over here to get to the Sydney race, you know, so just
you had a few gates go through before you could get to that that event.
Yeah. And so, so I had to run some qualifying races to get to the other event. So then once I got qualified and I could get into the event, then I focused on a half marathon in June. And then there's a rule of thumb that for every mile of the race that you just ran, so like it was a half marathon, so 13 days, is that 13 miles would equal, you have 13 days to recover. So like for a marathon, it's a 26-mile race, so give yourself 26 days to recover. If you do a 10K, that's 6 miles, give yourself 6 days to recover. Like don't ask your body for anything except for recovery miles. So after those 13 days were over, after that half marathon, the training kicked in. Like I went right into 80-mile, like 70 and 80-mile weeks. And then those high mile weeks with speed work continued until my taper time, like a couple weeks before the marathon. So
I want to just draw out the point of how strategic recovery time is. And second, when you have a running schedule, my runner friend said, you do these kind of intervals of going up and down. It's never linear. It's always dynamic, and you have kind of a strategy of push, pull back, push, pull back. And I think that's so important in any area of life, that it's not about being linear performance and always being the Michael Jordan, always shooting all the points. It's really important to have that strategy.
Exactly. Because like I didn't have, every week was not a 90-mile week.
Yeah.
I mean, so after my 13 days were over for recovery, I jumped into, I should have had my little mileage thing out here, but it like went to 70 miles, and then I started building up like 70 to 75 to 80 to 85, and then I come back down. My coach then said, I think we need to, he likes to do back-to-back high miles weeks. And once I got over 85 to 90 miles, right after I did that kind of high miles, I would have to drop to like 60 or 70. I couldn't ever keep it there, even though he would say, let's see if we can keep it there. I ended up calling him by like Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep it here. I'm so tired. I am so tired. But he would listen to that, and he's like, all right, make sure everything's slow, no speed this week. Like he would adjust to how I was feeling. But by the time it was the 90-mile week, I was so exhausted because I've already been training for 2 months, and all those miles are in my legs, and I am exhausted.
Like how exhausted? Like this feels pretty heavy here.
I would ask this is how exhausted it would. I do make rules for myself to get myself out the door to get on a run. So, and these have been for years. So some of the rules are you don't get your shower until the run is over.
Okay.
And I don't like to be with me when I haven't showered. So I know
that's big time leverage. Like you're gonna pay attention to that.
Yeah. And then also there's some mantras that we runners share. And one of the mantras is, if you put your running shoes on, you'll be out the door. If you get that first mile done, you're going to be able to do the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I started breaking up my runs into 2 or 3 a day, like to make it more manageable. So sometimes when you think about, I have to be out there for an hour or more, just seems too heavy. So there would be times where I would ask my husband or some of my kids, Just help me get through that first mile. Just get on the bike and get me through the first mile, because then I'll be fine. Like, get me through that first mile. And
You got momentum.
And I remember this one night, it was a Saturday night or a Friday night, and I was like, I had to do that second run. I just had no desire. Like, people are like, you love running. I'm like,
When you
not
say no desire, how'd you feel? Like, really?
I felt like I could just sleep the rest of the night, or just turn on the TV and just be on bed the rest of the night. I was so exhausted, and I remember feeling like I didn't want to go. I just didn't want to go. There was not a cell in my body that wanted to go on that run. But I knew I needed the miles to hit my mileage goal for that week. And I do care about doing well on the race. So race day, you're like, I have to do this. It's a commitment that you make to yourself, no matter how hard it is.
Yeah.
Well, I got my shoes on. I went out the door, and I was in the run. And the first mile was pretty awful. And you're like, I need a new hobby. I need a new hobby. Like, you're like begging yourself to find something different to do that was a little bit more relaxing and restful.
No more pain, please. No more pain.
And so I'm out there running, and then along comes my husband, comes driving up next to me, and I'm like, what are you doing here? This is like mile 3 in the run. I'm starting to feel a little bit better, but I'm still not having fun. And out jumps my 17-year-old son. He goes, Mom, I'm out here to run a couple miles with you. And I'm like, and then after he ran like 3 miles with me, then I'm like, I could run like another 40, like I was able to run like another 4 or 5 miles. So not only did I was able to finish my goals for that day, but then I even helped out myself for the next day. Like I chewed off a couple more miles that were for the following day. So
if I could pause right there,
yeah.
I feel like there's a really valuable principle here, that the social aspect of the momentum that we offer each other when we see other goals that are important to people, we show up for them in some small way. Maybe running's not our thing, whatever that one thing is. What kind of energy did that generate for you? What did that do for you when someone shows up for you?
It gave me so much energy, and it just made me smile, and it just like, and I know how much he hates running. He's a soccer player, but he hates to run. And so his sacrifice meant the world to me, and it just meant the world. And then I actually have someone to chat with and talk to. And then when we called for my husband to come pick him up like 3 miles later, I was able to, I'm like, I'm fine. I can keep going. You don't have to rescue me.
Well, and I think that's such a wonderful expression of how important it is that we show up for each other in small ways, and what it does for the other person.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we need to, if there's anything we can do for others, is to focus our energy and time and efforts to what are the 1 or 2 things to show up for someone that just gives them so much. It just multiplies their light.
Exactly. Yeah, and I guess critics would say, well, listen to your body, go lay down, like give yourself go put your feet up, like why? But there is a why, and the why is, so then when you're at mile 25 in the marathon, your legs are not as tired as they are on those runs. You've already been there. You've already been to that state of exhaustion. So now your legs, you showed up to that starting line fresh with fresh legs. They'll never get to that place where the load was so heavy and you still went out and you still ran. You don't ever hit that level of fatigue in the marathon. You're like, I've been here before. My legs have hurt worse than this before. This is nothing today.
Bring it on.
Fine. I've already done the hard. And so it gives you so much confidence in your legs, because like all those hard runs where it was so hard to get out the door and your legs just hurt, in the marathon you're like, I've already hurt worse than this. This is nothing.
Well, and I think it's a great point that you make of, there's kind of 2 energies in life. I feel like the nurturing energy and the protective or meet the challenge energy. And we need both of those. We need that. There's times where we just need to meet the challenge and push through, and there's other times we need to nurture and pull back. And we need both of those in the right mix.
Yeah. And so right now I'm in the nurture stage. Like right now I'm rebuilding my I'm rebuilding my spirit, rebuilding all that. And for what I want to do next time, like right now is the rebuild. And so it's lots of time off, so much slower pace training like as I'm not even training right now, it's just all recovery. It's just all recovery at this point because I did all the hard work in the summer. And you do know it does come to an end. Like I've done this process enough times. Like I trained for national races at the half marathon level, but then I trained in my early 50s for the ultra marathon distance on the track, and I did get 3 American records 2 years in a row on the track for the ultra. And so I've been through this process before. I know what it takes. I know what being tired feels like. I also know that sometimes you don't feel like doing what you're supposed to do, but you do it anyway. There's so much, like how many times when we have 9 o'clock church on Sundays, some of us have to get up so early, and it's just temporary. It's just a year. And so but you still get up and you still go, even though it's a lot easier 10:30 or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, but running does go into every area because of life, meaning like now I'm in grad school and there's like a lot of pressure there. But when you do that analogy of like, you've been through pressure before, pain is temporary. Like these are mantras we have, pain is temporary, things like that. And so it goes into grad school area. It goes into, just anything that is hard for us. We just know it's not forever. It's just a present situation.
I can see a lot of mothers needing that when they have young kids.
Yeah.
Or other cycles of life, maybe a guy in law school or whatever it is. But so tell me the week before Sydney, what was happening? And
so what was happening a week before Sydney is like my favorite time of my training world. Is you're not doing anything. You're really not. You're just like, the miles you're running are so slow and you're not running very many miles. In fact,
really chill. It's like
so chill.
Okay, interesting. You'd think like, oh no, we gotta get ready, intense.
So like I kind of peak, like at my age, I need more time to recover. So I peak, my highest miles and my hardest training is 6 to 4 weeks out, 4 weeks. And then sometimes in other races I've done 2 or 3 weeks, but I like the 4-week area. And sometimes, so that's where I'm doing my 90s and doing the 2 speed workouts a week. That's where I'm doing my most intense stuff. And then I lower my mileage, but it's kind of funny because running partners like, you don't really lower your mileage. I'm like, I lower it down to like 60 and 50, like I lower it down to that area. But then that week before though, it's like minimal miles, like the less
60 miles a week or a day. What is this?
60, so 60 a week. So like, yes, I lower my mileage, but I'm lowering it from like 90 to 80.
And do you keep it the same every day? Like you do like 10 or like 9 to 10 miles every day, or
well, so like
does that vary?
It just varies depending on what my mileage goal is for the week. So sometimes, when I went to my coaching class last summer because it's a brand new certification that they just gave after the Orlando Olympic trials, USA Track and Field decided we're going to do a coaching for anyway. In that, for the elites, they don't have any of the elites training more than 70 minutes for each run. So I really grasped onto that and they said that just helps your legs. And it does. Like it works so much better. Instead of going out to do 90 minutes and then later on in the day doing another hour,
give yourself a nice ceiling and a floor to say operate in this range, and that actually improved it.
Don't go over 70 minutes, and then then the second run of the day, don't go over 70 minutes. So I would keep it around the 70-minute area. So if that was 7 miles or 9 miles, you just keep it around the 70 minutes.
Okay, so you're getting ready for this race. You're actually being mellow, and then you fly to Sydney. I know Lonnie was telling me he surprised you, and he rode all the subways and surprised you and said hi.
Oh, yeah. So what was really phenomenal about Sydney is, because my legs are fresh now. I cannot sleep on flights, so my sleep is all off, but I was okay with that because I can rest afterwards. Like anything that happens, I can rest afterwards. I know that this is the big day. This is what we train for like the last forever. And for a long time, we've been training for this. So who cares about the sleep? We just have to just show up for this day and then rest later.
Yeah.
And so we walked to the start line. It's freezing cold. So I was training 90 degrees weather like they had last year on the same day.
90
So I
degrees
was doing
Fahrenheit.
a ton of week heat training, expecting it could be 90 degrees. And so I was in those 105-degree weather days. Yeah, I was the one out there training at 5 in the afternoon for 10
And
miles.
what was the weather actually like when you got there?
The cold front had come in. It was freezing. It was windy. They had wind gusts up to like 25 to 35 miles per hour when I was on the course, but by the time I got off the course, it increased to even harder. So I was glad I got off the course when I did, because the wind gusts got awful. But like Sydney, if you look at the course, there's no point to point. It's all over the place. You're turning, and so when you had the wind at you, it didn't last very long. Maybe the longest was like 3 miles. So like, because you would be turning and then you'd have the wind at your back, and then you turn and be again. So you were just all over the place. So that was a benefit, because you never had a headwind the whole time. It wasn't hard work.
So you had some variety and it wasn't constant.
And then the race director of Sydney told the racers in the World Championship race, yes, this is a very difficult course. Yes, we did this because we had to go by every iconic building possible. They wanted us to see Sydney. So we were going up and down the steepest hills possible. It was like San Francisco. But they started us on the other side of the historic bridge, this huge bridge. We ran across the bridge. That was the first mile. And then they had us downtown Sydney in the skyscrapers. And then that's when that messed up my watch. And that happens like in Chicago in the skyscrapers. I've been told that it kind of messes.
Is it GPS watch? Is that what's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I really didn't know my pace. I really didn't know my time. I'm just running off effort. And that's kind of just how I did the whole race. I kept seeing Lonnie, which was be a surprise, because in other races you don't get to see your family or friends very often. So he was able to pop up in the most unexpected areas, which was really fun. And I was feeling so good, I could actually like, hey, I was feeling good enough I could actually engage with him. And so it was just a really great day, great experience. And then I came into the finish line. I felt great the whole way. And it wasn't until like an hour after I had finished that I found out I podiumed. I would have been thrilled with top 10. I would have been thrilled. But then when I found out I was third, it was just like, that was like the best. But I knew a lot of people were back in Utah praying for me. I knew running partners were praying for me. I knew my family was praying for me. And so, and I really do, I mean, I really felt those. Like, I really felt good the whole day. I really felt like I was supported the whole day. But just to feel like your legs were feeling great. Of course, there's fatigue and you get tired. But like I said, I had done harder stuff in the training. Like how I felt that day didn't feel as hard as what I'd already done in the training.
Yeah. Well, and it's just interesting. We adopted 3 kids, and my youngest son, he's the training kid. He's helping us learn parenting 405. And it's been interesting. Someone was talking about some emotional problems recently or some challenge with their kids, and I'm like, bring it on. I've seen it all. And it's funny how at the time of the training of learning how to deal with these challenges with my son, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go on the run, metaphorically. But then next time it shows up, it's like, oh, I got this. This is way easier than last time. Like, okay, I'm good. I'm grateful. Like, I'm grateful that it can be at this level, and it doesn't have to always be at the 90-mile level, right? It kind of shifted my mindset to be more joyful, more grateful, and more focused on what really matters.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, that's true. I think parenting is such a priority though, because running's just a hobby.
Yeah.
Like it's a hobby area and it's self-inflicted pain, but parenting is a whole level of dependence on God, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like you cannot do any part of that journey without him guiding and teaching you along the way, is how I see it. Like there's so many times where I'm like mid conversation with a teenager. I'm like, give me the words, God, hand them. I need them. Channel it. And so I think when it comes with importance of family, those can feel even heavier than what a hobby can like, because you're like, these are eternal principles too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. So you you got third in the race, you
Mhm.
complete,
Mhm.
and what in your awareness has changed since preparing for this race? What have you learned or become more aware of and be able to see from a higher perspective?
Well, the one thing you can see is hard work does pay off sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, it so because sometimes you can work really hard on training for a race, and I've seen this with running partners and myself. And sometimes you you never when you're at the start line, you have no idea what's going to show up that day. That's the thing about marathons is that they're so humbling and you respect them so much because anything can happen. So when all the stars align and everything goes right, there's so much appreciation to it because
Yeah.
there's been so many times it doesn't go right. And I wonder how this percentage thing that I was taught in my coaching class goes over to other areas in life. They said, about a third of your marathons will just be awesome. They'll just be awesome. Great. You're gonna have a great day. A third of
Yeah.
your marathons are gonna be so. They're just gonna be all right. Wasn't great, wasn't awful. And then you're gonna have a third of those marathons be like, that was a death march. That was awful. That was like never again. I won't do this again. You're making promises to yourself. And so I wonder how that goes into other areas in our life because you're right, we're going to have days that are moments that just are great, that this is true happiness, this is true joy. But then there's moments like I wonder if there's like some data out there that says kind of like how they've done data on the marathon. If we actually did data on our own life, that like a third of the time it's going to be awesome. And then a third of the time it's going to be like, oh, it's kind of in a boring realm right here, but it's all right to be bored,
Almost sounds like the weather. I mean, if you
Yeah,
look at the four seasons, 25% of the time we're like, yay, perfect fall and
yeah,
summer, or I
yeah.
mean, fall and spring. And then the other times like winter, like, oh, never again. And then spring,
Never
like,
again. Yeah.
it's okay. It's a little
Yeah.
hot.
It's so true. I think so. Well, anyway, so I do use my running as an analogy and so many other things, especially at grad school. It's hard. Like I didn't choose a easy school to go to,
What are you
and
studying?
I'm doing clinical mental health. Like
Oh,
so, yeah, I want to be
okay.
a counselor. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's where I was a teacher for so long, and I was on my feet all day working with those elementary kids. Anytime I sat down, I felt like I wasn't doing something right because there's always a child that needs your attention in that classroom. And after like when I was like, oh my heavens, I am tired at the end of the day. I need help getting my coat off. And I'm like, you got to find a new career because you're going to have to sit down some more. Like you need a job. You need a job where you can sit down. I'm like, what job can I sit down in? And so that's why I went back to grad school, is so I could sit
Neat.
down.
I'm looking forward to it. Is there any particular area of focus or interest that you have, or a drive that drove you to this?
So, well, that was the motivator, is to find something different to do until my brain gives out on me. But then also, I do want to help people.
Yeah.
I love this. A person, I work part time, Lily Anderson, and I love how much she can help people. Like I schedule an appointment for her, but as the schedule, I'll get a thank you from the client being like, thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm like, I didn't even do anything besides schedule the client. But whatever Lily did for them was so valuable. They're sending me a note of appreciation. Not that I could ever be a Lily, because she's just off the charts. Like she's just this amazing psychologist that taught at BYU, writes books. She's just
Yeah.
phenomenal. I'll never be a Lily, but I do want to be able to be there for people to help them find hope
Yeah.
when they're going through hard stuff. Yeah, I just would love that. And then I'm going to focus in the marriage and family area
Okay.
where, I think we all need help, but individual as well. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just really would love, I like to go out there on my runs. I find that a lot of people will share things that they're going through, and if I can help them out when we're running, but then if we, I have my license one day, I can help others in another way.
Good. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm going into coaching. Some of the similar interests and desires. We got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Um, I think one was so much in my life I felt confused how to deal with emotions, how to deal with communications, relationships, how to deal with the immature parts of ourselves, how to
Hmm.
meet your own needs, how to even explain to others what your needs are and be aware of them.
Hmm.
And yeah, I got into it this last year. I was kind of coaching at work and other places just naturally. I have this
Mhm.
gift that people open up to me for better or for worse. And
Mhm.
my wife was like, "You need to do this for official. Go get some training and go do it."
Yeah.
And it has so touched my life. It's so satisfied a need for connection with people deeply, significance, helping someone. And I think
Mhm.
too, humbleness in that I need to step back and let them be the hero of their story.
Mhm.
And my job as a coach or as a therapist, right? I think has a similar principle is to lead them back to that space of love where they feel empowered to create a better life.
Mhm. That's great. Yeah.
And it's such a careful, I think, thing to do between wanting to go out and run the race with them
Mm.
versus I'm going to train you, I'm going to give you encouragement, but you're the hero of the story.
Mhm. Yeah.
And and I think it sounds like you can really resonate with us.
Well, it makes me smile because my coach Demetrio has like straight out just told me random times, you're a person who will be happy if you run every day. Like just by telling me that, I'm like, it can solve stuff, like that for me. So when you're coaching people, you're going to find what resonates for them and you'll coach them and encourage them through that process of finding what resonates for them to make, to
Yeah,
have
like
those
Dimitri
achievements.
said, running's
Hmm.
going to make you happy. I can see.
Yeah. If you do it you're going to do it every day the rest of your
Every
life.
day.
Yeah, I know. So just out of the blue, you're like, okay, I have found that it does solve problems. Like the whole world can feel like it's crashed around me. And I do go out on that walk, jog, run, or whatever I'm doing. And I come back and I'm recharged.
So
And I'm
I
like,
think there's a key point I learned recently. Agency, whether you're act or acted upon, the ability to change your state of being, it gives you more agency. If you can
mm-hmm,
change from sad and depressed, happy, peaceful, content, excited, you have more power to change your physiology, the stories you tell yourself, and the focus of your life. You change your state of being. And so anytime, any activity, running is one example, you
yeah,
change your physiology, you move. You change your story. I'm becoming something. I'm working towards something. I'm going to be the hero, and your focus. Like, I got to
mm-hmm,
focus. I got to do these miles. I'm focused on getting better. I'm focused on learning from my coach. That creates the triangle of power.
yeah,
And I think that that gives us more agency. Any activities, stories we tell, or focuses that lead us to higher states of being, that gives us more tools in our toolkit to show up in life.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
So I just think that if there's anyone who's listening, running's one example of a way to increase the power in your life to change your state.
Yeah. Sometimes just going outside.
Yeah, sometimes just a walk.
Yeah. Just go outside, breathe in, like touch grass. You just don't find that thing that does change your state of being. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
possible. And you'll find if you're looking for it, you'll find what that is. And
yeah, agreed.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. I'll post this podcast in a little bit and send you a
Okay.
link. I had to tell you, I'm really grateful I met your husband.
Yeah.
He taught me about solution focused therapy that really, it's amazing how one little tool sometimes can just totally shift your world.
Mhm.
And I was having a hard time with my son, and I bet your coach too is giving you those little nuggets of like, oh my goodness, that little thing just completely
Mhm.
changed the scenery.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you so much for your time
You're
and
welcome.
sharing your story.
Oh my gosh, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about it. I really appreciate that.
You're
It's
welcome.
it's fun to talk about something that went really well. But I did have to say there were brutal moments at training when you're like, no more, make it stop. But then it didn't. I mean, we just kept going through, and then I had a great day because of the effort. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but
well,
thank
and
you.
what did you focus on when you're going through those brutal moments?
I know it's gonna pay off.
I know it's going to
I
pay
had
off.
done the training before. I had done it before to get my American records, to get national championships. I had done it before. I knew it was worthwhile to go through the hard stuff, to get out
Yeah.
the door when you don't to.
And
Hmm.
so that confidence, that certainty you have that if I focus on this, that is going to lead somewhere
Oh yeah,
that I
it's
want.
worthwhile.
Yeah,
Coach,
worthwhile.
Yeah, it is. The hard stuff is worthwhile.
Well, thank you. Good luck with grad school.
Okay, thank you so
And
much.
say hi to Lonnie for me.
Okay, I will. Thanks, Ben. Have
All
a
right.
great rest of your day.
Okay, take
Bye.
care.